Merci beaucoup. So also for your invitation, I have to switch now to English. Excuse-moi, mais ma France c'est très bon pour boire quelque chose avec vous, mais n'est pas pour parler en lecture à 1h30 sur le thème de intimité of architecture. So this was a mail by Barbara. She sent us with really this very hard theme of a cycle intimité in architecture. And really with your, let's say, introduction on your website, what you're thinking about this, and it's full, it's like, for me it was like a box of Pandora, because to talk about this, it's a test, what I try now, and you can judge on the end if I reach the aim a little bit to talk about this. The first, what we said, you use a little bit this kind of intimacy in this big room that you're sitting separated in small groups. So a little bit you feel that it's necessary to have this. But that's why I said I have to start with this image, what we use usually when we start a project to discuss it with a client. And you wrote that the world is globalized and the privacy gets relative and intimacy exists between the architect and his project. Intimacy exists between the inhabitant and his house. And you said intimacy is a way to define how one opens itself to the world. But as I think everybody of you is educated in architecture, or he is an architect, that everybody of us knows that architecture is influenced by money, by the dreams of a client, by the knowledge of an architect, and maybe like by skills of the worker. And I think these four things we can bring together quite easy and to make nice architecture and a kind of intimacy. So we have also money, the availability of material and local conditions, but in this we are trained. This is part of the knowledge of an architecture. But I think architecture is also, and I speak a little bit in a strong way in the complete lecture about Germany, that we feel that architecture is today influenced also by the German industry norm, European norms, building law, building regulations, user regulations, employment protection, health insurance, and safety protection. And this, I think, it's not very intimacy. So it means if you build your own house, you're not able to do it against this complete system of laws. So that means, I think, today it's not more possible to build a building in Europe in an intimacy way. So that's my answer to the lecture. That's why I said, okay, now I can stop, or we can discuss about this, because it starts with a handrail of the Minergie, of the Suva, when you start to build a house, and all these arms of the society and of all, let's say, discussions what we add to our communication in human system has a long arm or influence to architecture. And that makes it very difficult for us, but it's not a hopeless profession, I think. And let's a little bit start a tour through some of our projects and to explain a little bit how we produce architecture in a kind of maybe also of intimacy and what we mean if it's intimacy. So the first was that I said, it's really easy for us because the same question that was asked for us, they asked us 2010 from the German Architectural Center in Berlin to do an exhibition for 1 month about the work of our office under the theme Formel X. And Formel X usually, this is a top secret recipe of Coca-Cola to produce Coca-Cola, and nobody knows it, so this is the most intimacy thing and the most valuable thing in the world. And they ask us, how you produce your architecture. And then we said, if we give this Formula X out of our office, everybody can produce our kind of architecture, and then it's no more intimacy. It's something like a common sense, maybe. So we had a little bit, we were scary about this, and we had a big discussion in the office how we can fill this exhibition space in the gallery. And then we said in 2010, okay, we have two things in the office what are influence our work. One it's really a mess of memory, of a cultural memory, and this memory exists on one side in a digital and in an analog way. And then we said, okay, let's put this like in a church on a big table, where the different religion preach things, and we present only our objects what we like, and it's like a laboratory, and we say nothing about architecture, and everybody who will go there, he can start a little bit a dialogue between these elements, these objects, and this memory of impressions on the outside. And then when I was thinking about this question about intimacy, I add, after I look back to the exhibition again, that I think a thing of intimacy we can really find only in an object, in a relation to an object, because we have it in our pocket, we live with it. It's a case, it's a piece, it's a tool, something like this. And in this kind of intimacy, what we get with them is we have to know how it works, we have to adapt it. It's something like it gets a part of us. We have experience with them. So, and then this tool is also a tool for us to explain the world, to explain connections, details, and so on. So, and I think against the digital world, we have really this impression of this mass of analog objects which exist in our community, and that's why I switched to the first two projects to talk about private collections. So because private collections are really this kind of a very intimate thing that people collect things, they have a relation to them, since the last 100 years, the people start to open this very private intimacy thing to the public to exhibit them. And now we made 5 projects about this kind of exhibitions. And this was really a discussion about what means of intimacy of an analog object and a public presentation of it. So that's why the first place where we go together is in Dresden. It's in Saxonia, the capital of Saxonia, and they have a transport museum, and this is one of the transport museums which in the world which exhibits all kind of traffic. Usually you have railway and airplane exhibitions, but not all kind of traffic. And so they have sea, street, water, air, all the ways where people move, because they have a big background on production of this transportation industry. And they had a collection of objects from the 18th century. So we cared only about the airplanes. We had really the question for us was to make an exhibition about how the people can fly and what is history of this. And they had a big collection of these very private things. So the first airplanes, what they used in this area, Zeppelins, in the 18th century, before the Wright brothers in Germany, we had the same ones, Otto Lilienthal called, they start to fly. And in the 19th centuries, and then the public transportation when it starts. And they had really this big table full elements between 1 to 1, 1 to 10, 1 to 5, and original elements. And this we have to put in 3 rooms. And it was quite amazing to put the history and the collection only in 3 rooms. So what we did was, so we made an order with the museum direction, and we said, okay, we will have 3 topics in this museum. The first is the very personal discussion about one airplane produced in Dresden. The second one is to talk about the history of aerospace. And the third one only about air. So these 3 things could be maybe interesting to exhibit, and then we start the design process and the discussion about this. So the first room was a story about the airplane. It's quite interesting. If you go deeper in this was the first jet passenger airplane built in 1956. Outcoming of civil engineers they had. Went after the World War II in prison to Russia. They came back. And then they start powerful to follow these ideas what they had before, and the government pushed this a little bit, and so they had the chance to build the first airplane in 1952 in the Russian part of Germany, And that was amazing because the Americans, the French, and the Russians, they had, no, Germany, when they start to build airplanes again, okay, they use it for passenger traveling. It's like war production. We have to stop this. It's not possible. So they really start this process, but on the end, there was a lot of influences. In the first 3 airplanes, they crashed. Nobody knows why. There is some discussion about spies and what they did behind this. But it was really a powerful thing for this area because they really start to rebuild an industry what it was not more there. So on the end, we had, like in the 3 images, the first is the airplane, the B-152 it named, the production in Dresden, and then like when the airplane crashed, you have a collection of existing parts, what's still there, and you have to make a research about which elements we have. You will try to understand it. And that's why we used in the discussion with the client this question of the atmosphere of industrial production, the atmosphere of these elements where you carry these pellets, oil-normed or from recycled plastic. And this was the very simple exhibition design for us, and we replaced all this very personal intimacy documents in this room, and it had an atmosphere on the end, like a production hall on one side, and on another side, a little bit like a depot of crashed industrial culture of the crashed airplane. And now it's interesting for the visitor to go through and really to try to understand what happened in this time. So we had only this part. You see there's a big graphic on the wall what shows which element are still exist. The rest is crashed and burned down, and there are no more documents. We found old plans of it, and then we made interviews with this first engineer. They're still now 100 or 95 years old, and they talked about this. So that's a very personal place to talk about a very personal rest of culture. And in the second room, when we stepped there was the question of a history of aerospace. And then we had a discussion with the client, and we are using every time this digital images when we start to discuss, or sometimes this is analog images. And we said, you know, when you want to go in the air, we have to do 2 things. We have to use a staircase to go up in the airplane, and then we start. And usually, if you want to come down, one thing is what everybody dreams from, not dreams from, but everybody thinks he learned such jokey things about this, to use this escape slide, but really to use it. And you say, yeah, this could be really a good expression in an exhibition to how we can go up and how we can go down. And then we said, and if we organize the room in the same manner like a pop-up book, what the children use when you open it and you have 3-dimensional elements and you can walk through, this is something when we start a dialogue with really people, they're not educated in design and all of these things. But if you use these elements, it could be really an understandable design. So even the client had since 30 years an airplane with a half wing in the wall because it was too big for the room. So we had to build everything around, and then we used also, like in this book, this graphic from an airport as this runways in the way to have orientations in it. But the client, and now it's influence of client and architect, he said, no, this slide I cannot put in a museum, because, you know, I have law regulations. And if somebody goes down there and he breaks his leg, I don't want to be responsible for that. So the best design option for this, it was stopped with one sentence, I have a law. So this is what I mean, that we every time have these influences. And then for us as designers, still to be an ironic thing that you will design a staircase what never touch the ground. A little bit in the irony, you have a gap on it on the end, and you feel a little bit in this way, you're still in the air of it. And then we add persons like one-to-one models with fashion designers of this pioneer. They talk about experience of flying. And it was really on the end a little bit like this copy of a 3D book or these pop-up books, what you get. And only to have this very personal one-to-one original elements, like this first balloon, what they had in the area there, and text, graphics, and all of this manner. They're coming out of this digital world. And then the last room, it was quite the difficult one, because it was a room of airflow. And that was another thing then starts in a discussion to a project that we say inside every man there is a child waiting to play, that like Nietzsche said this, and we were remembering on this comics what we had in our youth. In Germany we call them Daniel Düsentrieb, in the States or in Disney they called the Mr. Gillows, and he was a guy who really invented all these impossible things. And they said, okay, this could be an idea for a room. We are inviting people to come up and to play with air, with elements what you have at home in your kitchen, like a hairdryer and a Hoover and so. And then was the same. The client said, no. If the young pioneer or the young children are coming up and they see what you can do with this element, they start to deconstruct at home every flat. And I cannot be responsible for this. And okay, but maybe we can design machines, they may be similar like these objects. And on the end, we add in this room only one table, one flag, like we know it from the airplane, and we designed together with a young team of 3D ID, they call them, and we designed models, like we know in physics for experimentation, and to explain why we can fly in the air. So we have an aerodynamic streamline model, we have a smallest wind tunnel in the world maybe, which explains airstream, then we have ascending force, and it's really something like you experiment and you see how the air and the relation of a design goes together. And on the end, really, there are products of an idea, of in physics regulations what you have, and the law what you can use, how deep you can put your hand in it. It was something like prototypes, like capacity of air lifting capacity, or this what we said we can do with a hairdryer. If you warm up the air, something can get fly like a monument of a balloon. So this is a little bit a question of this personal elements and designing exhibitions to get the relationship between intimacy element and the common sense or a common impression. And the second exhibition maybe because it's completely different and it offers a little bit the question of this digital question what you had also in your text, that we are planning since 7 years on the reconstruction of the castle in Dresden, which is a royal palace. It was a royal palace for 400 years, from the electors and kings of Saxonia, from the 15th century to the 1980. And this castle was destroyed in 1945 completely, more or less. And this is something what it was like you cut a head of a horse out, and so really something very important is missing. So because this castle was very important for the development of the complete town, it was a mirror of the understatement of culture in Saxonia, because the royals were very involved to scientists and they take care about really about the development of the country. And they were very big collectors. And one is well known, that is the green rooms, what they have there with these very old collections. And now it's interesting that this reconstruction of the castle is done by images which they start to make it with photos from 1920 till 1945. So Hitler was responsible more or less for destroying the castle, but he made also a documentation of the castle complete way. And now the reconstruction goes on by these images. In this case, we are really proud to have this database of information, which it's really inform us how we can reconstruct this castle, because it's really important for the understatement of the culture of Saxonia. And in this castle, they have they will have in future. I think now it's 80% done. They have really reconstructed original parts with old craftsmanships and old techniques, and then they have new parts. They are similar, or they try to find new interpretation of it. And they have really big collections of the numismatic cabinet. This is what we did. We talk about later, and the collection of prints, drawings, photographs, and the biggest collection of armoricy. What we are now planning, and it will be open next year. So this is a small part in the castle. And then we have really these objects again of, I think that is the most intimacy thing what we can have. So this is what the royals collect in the 15th century. So the first Leatherman, it's coming not from the States, it's coming from Saxonia or Bavaria. It's a small factory, they did this. And these original things they really have there, they're unique, you have only one of them. A lot of kind of weapons and of these coins, very old one, starts from the Greek one. And we had to give them a new home. Now we are opened 2 weeks ago, this numismatic cabinet, and we had to replace this cabinet in a complete destroyed building. So inside was nothing, only rebuilt these rooms in a proportion. And this area was in the 19th century in the castle the living place of the electors. So it had these references to this amphithéâtre, this question of a salon, and this cabinet fellowship. And that's, we said, if we discuss about this value of a coin, we remember how I can concentrate me from the complexity of world to a very strong detail, that we said, okay, if we talk about like Saint Jerome in his study, when he is situated in a big church and he tried to understand the world with really selected elements to sitting there and to find a dialogue with this, or this temple house models by Wechsler, or we know these tool cases when we have at home a scruler or all of this, they customized boxes for very special use and for a very special tool. And that, okay, this could be an idea to design such a numismatic cabinet. And this is what we tried to implementate in 3 rooms of them. So you have an entry outcoming of a big salon to this very intimate place. And we had to make a lot of tests. What is the influence of the architecture, the renderings, mock-ups, what they built there, and what is the influence of light, and what is important of an object. And in the end, when you are today there, you see only the objects. You're not seeing the architecture. And that is quite interesting, because you feel very in an intimate discussion with the small coins and with the small elements. And really after 5 minutes, you forgot the room and you feel like in a box. So that is, I think, the most intimate place what we could, or what we did in the last time, in relation with a very intimate object, I think. So everything what is written on this object is much more interesting, and even the value of each of this object is much more than the architecture. So you can take one of the coins and you can pay the complete architecture of it. So that is a little bit the ironic part, because to talk about coins and money in Switzerland is a little bit more jokey. But 3 weeks ago there was an opening, or there was a big meeting of the G7 finance ministers, and they opened this exhibition and to visit, and they were impressed by this old tradition of coins. Because the name dollar came from a coin in Saxonia, what they first pressed in the 13th century. So that was interesting how the culture is linked. So what we done there, and what we done with our exhibition in the German Architectural Center, it was a manner that we know from this Wunderkammer. So these are rooms in the 15th century that electors and royals. They were very big collectors of everything what they wondered and where they thought to impress or to learn something from the world. And this is something, I think, this is what we are doing in architecture also, that architects, it's a kind of resembling, it's a kind of rearrange things. And that is what they did with this collection later. That is what we are doing every day in programs in architecture. And that's why I think we are very similar to this kind of culture. But what we are doing, and that is now the second part of the lecture, is to talk about that we are usually we go up with this books of Vitruve, Corbusier, Mies van der Rohe, and all of this. But we learned very early in our architectural discussion with clients that our clients never read a book about Vitruve. He never know who is Corbusier and Mies, and we can talk with them about architecture in a manner of like Bernd Rudowski's book, Architecture Without Architect. And in this case, we need this globalized world of images, what we use to find a discussion with them and with these objects. So we use them really like a laboratorium for association and for references, something like this, because like here, when you have it on the table, it was this discussion about this pressing form, the black ones in the middle, so they're outcoming of a production process of metal forms. So they are like an object, or they're very prominent, they're sculptures, or you have these rolls, what they used before or today in some parts of Germany too, to color the walls with flowers. Like ornament and texture, what is this, where it's coming from, or this small red and yellow towers, they're not models from Herzog de Meuron for a new building in Davos. So on one side they could be like this, but on another side they're production roles of the textile industry. And so each form of a textile is implanted in this role in the ornament. So that is interesting, I think, and this is something, a way to explain a client maybe a kind of architecture. So that is our manner to do it. Or this was, we found this, it was the belts from a girl, from the grandmother. She had a big box of this and she collected this. So we earned this and yeah, amazing. And then in another part in this exhibition, we really opened the discussion about this huge book of images. We said images exist not only today on the iPhone, but for us also on LPs, which include the best music what we had, and we know the cover of the Pink Floyd album. And when I talked with a lawyer about this, and we started about Pink Floyd, then we came to the album, and then to the image on it, and then maybe to architecture. It's another entry to him. Or when you sit in we have this postcards collection office, or you have when you drink beer in a pub, they had really a lot of these things where you put the beer on it. So today I think they're not so wonderful like in the 60s. And then of course we have this collection, what we are doing every time, like you have it here on your table with Sejima. When you're traveling, you see objects, but they're mainly not objects from architects. They're really references to explain how the normal life is going on. And I think this is something what Nipies opened us when he invented photography. It's like really to open us a cultural memory, and I think photography or this digital world or this world of images, it's something like Esperanto for us. Esperanto is not so successful like the images, and they're really like a knowledge, I think. We use them now, let's say 100 years, and they are something like letters, maybe some like words, but since 100 years we are looking for a grammar how to use it. And this is not so easy to find a grammar, how to use this kind of images and how to implement them in a design process, in a discussion. And even that we have that's why we made with the students last time this experiments that we said even that the images today are linked with words. So if I use the word Schloss, Castle, Castello, Chateau in different languages, and they go to Google and make a research about this, then I see they are maybe close. So the first line is German, then we had Castello, Castle, and the castle is the last one. So the word and the image is in a different link. So it's not so hard to see in this kind of in architecture. But when you are doing the same with like, let's take the word of Frau, Donna, and femme, you get crazy about the differences of impression of an image. So this is Frau, this is German impression of an image. This is Donna. So you think usually it has to be the same, but it's not like this. And if you go to femme, the internet says it's like this. So you have to take care about really careful about this, which word you use, but this is something what we learned when we entered to the French part of Switzerland, to jump between these different languages. You use this between Italian, German, and French in your country. But you see, if you talk about images, they're completely different. Or let's go only to one language. In the last example, if you take only the English words, one like wife, woman, madam, or madame, then you have the same complete. The wife, okay, it's a person linked to a husband, maybe. And if you want to say a woman, in English, it's like this expression, outcoming of the Bing research of images. Madame, it's madam is this, and madame, it's this. So only a word and the image, it's completely interesting now. And I think we are today really in this training process to find the grammar, how we can use it, and how we can produce out of this architecture. And now we get to make it more complicated, to go back in 1920, when the image starts to produce it, that to manipulate images is not something new. So not that Sarkozy is every time taller than, you know which person I mean. But even Lenin used this when he had meetings and he had speeches. Later, this image again, when he brought his reviews by Stalin, he said, no, Trotsky, we have to erase them on the image and we have to manipulate them. So, but this is interesting. In this case, something new happened. And this is the most impressed image what they made 8 years before in a small village in Hungary. So, and this was done before the cold, because the borders were really big open, and even in this image, this really poor farmer lived there. But they named his mountain Hollywood. And this influence came only by the digital world. So they turned something complete in a different manner, with copying something, implementing this to their own culture, and they gave the complete new identity to this place, I think. Only with the small letters. They never traveled there, I think. Nobody was there from this village. Too expensive to go there. And this is, I think, now we have something that it thinks its forms, we have something like forms for architect, like we said, form follows function. It's not more this. I think today we have a little bit more this manner of form follows perception. And this is something when we start to discuss about projects, and now let's go back to some examples, that how we can produce architecture with it. This was one project what we did, finished in 2008, and I went really back to this because to talk about intimacy and about these analogies, it was the most complex what we did till today. So it starts a story again, back to Saxonia, a small village it called Freiberg. In the 11th century they found silver there. And this was a rich, the foundation of the richness of the area. And they built a small building to protect the silver mining. So it was a small castle and a ring of a big wall around this to protect the silver miners. But then the kings, they get richer, and they rebuilt this again to a Renaissance place. They were very proud, and then they moved to Dresden. So the first royals, what they had in the story before, they lived before in Freiberg, and when they moved, they said, okay, we don't need more of this castle. In the 16th century, they moved to Dresden, and the castle a little bit starts to disappear. But these royals were also very proud, and it was for this town really a very impressive building, and it was really impressive story. But what happened, here you see the royals, and this is a funeral procession when the elector died in 16th century. On the left corner, you see the castle there. So it was really the center of the town. But in 2000, when they started this competition, the castle was a reused Renaissance building in the 18th century for a military depot. So you had a Renaissance castle, with inside all erased ceilings, all ornaments, all furniture, but the outside form or the outside shape, it was still this castle, but inside it was a depot for corn and arms. And this was really a double object. You never find this in the world again, I think, a Renaissance castle like and a depot with 200 old years beams in it. And if you take out the beams, you see this walls in a situation like the Renaissance salon could be. And the people in this town, they were so proud about the story and about this cultural impact, so they have also the oldest university of mining in this town. They found also in this time when the mining industry starts to be there. So they have this really big tradition there, and they made every year festivals in this empty castle, no more used as a corn depot, and they asked, what can we do with this? So the royals are disappeared, we have nothing to put in, and we cannot use them. So they found two things. What there was, I think, the most interesting point of the story, that they had from the university the biggest collection of minerals for education for the students. And then a woman, she was grown up in this town, and after the war she moved to Fribourg. So she lived in Fribourg, and she was one of the owners of Schwarzkopf, the cosmetic industry. And she was a private person with the biggest collection of minerals, private biggest collection. And she said, okay, I want to give this collection back to Germany, to my birthplace, and if you build a place for me. This is one thing, and another thing that a government looked for a depot for all history of mining literature, of mining documents, what they had since more or less 1,000 years in this area. So they said, okay, let's reuse the castle for a depot and a museum. And this was a terrible competition, because usually these two functions you cannot put in this castle in this condition. And we did two things. We said we want to add less as possible to the castle, because the castle is still in a form, an object like a castle, and it has a presence in the town. We cannot add an elevator outside and the depot outside. And we have to shrink the program, what the client wants, because the program was much more bigger than the castle could be. And then we said, we want to do two things. We want to erase the historic depot structure in one side of the castle, and on another side, this depot structure, it's really nice. We can use them for the mineral exhibition. This was a dream of us. But then we win the competition with this idea. Then we start the design process. And then the director or the president of the university came and said, no, I said to this person in Fribourg that she will get big Renaissance rooms for his minerals, and you have to change your project. We said, no, we are the architects, and we said this is the most important thing of the project. And so it was a really discussion about cultural heritage in Germany. And on the end, the minister feels the decision, and he said, okay, we cut it into pieces. On one side, you make your historical construction. On another side, you can make the Renaissance hall for the collection and for the president. So that is another influence on architect, which comes in from a very private decision from one person to decide about, let's say, a cultural heritage of a complete area. So on the end, we had to do this big salles to adapt the design or to go out of the project and to lose one of our biggest and interesting projects. So in this case, it's also a question how far you can go as an architect with your client and how proud you have to be or with your idea. So in the end, we had to adapt the complete design. What we had also, we asked, and this time also to do also again the mineral exhibition because they had problems in designing them, and we adapt this salon for the minerals in all manner with a big story. But on another part, we still had to build this depot for the collection or the knowledge of mining in this area. So this is Saxonian mining archive. And there we said, if we build an archive, there is one element in the world, what is the best archive, what we had, that was the Noah's Ark. It was a ship, all animals came in and they protect against weather and everything. And if you are doing something like this, if you have to build a house in a house, it's like a ship when they build it on a dock and to produce it. And maybe we use this image to implantate this depot in the house. And then we start to use a lot of images and a lot of objects what we found in this castle, like here you see this corn storage on the right side, and corn cone where they moved the corn from the different levels. So there were let's say geometric ornaments and links between different levels that we said, okay, we will use this also in a manner to produce our new arc in this. So there was a question of how we can connect the old facade with the new internal building, and how we can start a discussion on a static way, because one building helps another in this way. One building keeps the climate for the other one, so it was really a linked system, and we implanted this big, huge, let's say, ship and a dock for this big knowledge for the now protected for the complete future. And it's really a strong way to go with a cultural heritage, with a cultural building. But it was more important to keep the building from outside as a building, and to keep it in use. And this was the main thing, not to have an empty building, to find a use for it. And that's why it was really a strong or interesting work together with the cultural heritage, like a Heimatschutz, what you have here in Switzerland, and to build the project. So you have really this gap between the old and the new, and you have this element. It shows out that inside it's something new. What was used in the first project sketches for ventilation of the depot, like you have these elements on the ship. When you looked for fresh air for the machines on it. So this was the design on the end of this big element. And then we start, for us, really to learn a lot of this knowledge and this cultural heritage, what they had there. So we traveled in 5 different mines, silver mines, salt mines, and two other ones, and from 200 to 800 meters down in the earth. And we really start to find out what we can use for a design process and for a discussion with the client, because he was completely educated with all these problems of mining. So they said the first impression was that if you are under the earth, you are surrounded by a monochrome stone. So that's why it starts to have monochrome rooms. So it was also important for us to be under this arch and to create these rooms under the arch in a manner to be under an arch, to be in a ship on one side, on the other side to be in a part of a mining system, and to find these objects. So these are the library what you have there. You can read and study these documents, and then they have exhibition place for very old documents now today there. And then we were every time confronted by these minerals and what they found. So we start really an analogy of heritage. Here is a geode and these crossed tools of the miners. So everybody in this town has these crossed tools in his jacket, and when they meet, they're really everywhere. So I said, okay, not to fight against this, to work with it. We said we have to do it, and this could be produce a new kind of architecture. So like here, when you be under the ground, you see how they work, and when they find something, how proud they are when they find the minerals. And that, okay, if we produce this kind of architecture, we will use the same tools what they use in the underground to break this concrete surface and to open it. And really to start the discussion in the same way in this building, that you see the ingredients of the concrete, you have not a smooth surface, you have this craftsmanship to beat the stone, you have round corners, and then we had also the surprise that every ingredient of the concrete came out in this process for us, and they get a part of the design. So there you have the distance holder for reinforcement in the concrete, and this was one kind of producing the architecture. And then we had the analogy of objects, is that everybody knows that we have mineral colors. So if you open a mineral, you see colors you never trust that they are natural. Even that we had this in the exhibition to do with different light conditions and what are the colors of the mineral. So in this case, we create also these rooms in a monochrome way in the entrance building, for instance, here, and you feel a little bit like it's an element of to exhibit something. On another side, it's an element of an architecture, and it's really like a bridge between these different elements of knowledge of cultural heritage, what they have. So that is the central staircase of the office part in the building, and behind you have this white, clean offices. And really in the use, the client said, for me it's like to go in a forest from one side, on another side, from the mining side is to be in the underground and to have this impression. There's the library we've seen before where the books are, that is more the white one, and there's an information desk where you ask for the books. And also the acoustic elements, what we had to do, they are prefabricated acoustic elements. They are on the end, they look like minerals, but they are coming out of a technical production process. And then when we talked about transparency, we used this kind of logo or of graphic for all to producing transparency in gates and in curtains. Because this was another kind of irony. If you look through this this iconic element, you try to understand a little bit the area, and you will try to a little bit to understand the people there, and you see how the elements are coming together. And on another side, in the museum, for us it was very important to use these elements, what we saw in the mining visiting, this very industrial elements. So, for instance, we found this fontaine to wash, where the workers wash the hand, and we said, yeah, if we have a toilet in this museum, we want to have everybody even if it's man and woman together, to wash your hand on the same place and to start a communication about the museum, and the museum starts very early. Then we had the analogy of time. What was very interesting in this project is called old as new and new as old, because it was really in this discussion about Heimatschutz and to reuse things and not to expose it only, that really it was interesting to implement them in the new design. So there's a part of the library where we had a 200-year-old oak column, and we used them really in a static way. So this old column carries a new concrete part of the building. Or another part of the depot where they clean the documents, what they get new, we implanted them, and we had to explain to the client that you have to care about this wooden piece, but now you are responsible for it, and you will have less space because you have this wooden part. They make your space smaller as you want usually, or we keep the wall inside of the central atrium or the central entrance of the museum where the shop was situated. We said this is the most remarkable place what exists a little bit in the link to the corn depot, and then we explained them, yeah, it's like on the end like a basilica for you, and really it's a complete different way. You have to interpret rooms sometimes different, and then you get also a new cultural option for your thing. Then we found these old windows, we reused them, we add new windows in the same manner in a way. So this is a discussion of what is old, what is new, and which design solution follows the other one. And then you have other ones, they're new, but they look like old. Because the client said, I have a museum, I don't need light in it. You have to look to the minerals, with artificial light. I said, okay, maybe we can make inner shutters in a manner like the old ones, and then it's something like inside, outside, and you can keep it, and you can open it also, and maybe in a later use you will have the light, because somebody sees in a winter that the museum is open. And then you have this irony of the law situation, what we had before also, that we had handrails. They're not very old, 50 years. They add in the time of the, where they use it as a depot. But then we discussed with the Heimatschutz. We said, please protect this element. It's not linked to the staircase what you have, because this is the first staircase, the straight staircase in Germany, what they built in the 16th century. But this handrails, if you put them under protection, we don't have to follow the law for the disabled people to make all handrails around every corner and on every corner to make a handrail. So in this case, we use the law to make a design on a way like we think it's over-regulated system. Then we add elements again, new in an old manner. We couldn't reach them from the openings because the roof was closed, so we add stone elements in steel, like in an old way. Then we had a very old part in the castle that was a former kitchen, and the client came and said, "No, this is terrible, this black thing. They cook there and you cannot add a plaster on it." And he said, "No, but this is the story of the building. You cannot destroy it." And on the end, it was a long discussion about how you can implementate this in a design, or because this was a place where the client wanted to put the biggest and minerals. So that was more the secret room. But on the end, we found really a way for both to keep the history of one side and the exhibition on another side. And then also this question of tracks of history, that you add new windows in it and you don't close the other ones, even that you had this windows from the industrial side time, that we reproduce them in concrete, like imprint on the facade, because on this one side you see there is this big depot behind, but still from the side of the town you can read on the facade like a history of the complete building time, from one side to Renaissance windows and the corner down there to the industry and to the new use of the office building today. And then you had these professors, they came every time with this crystal drawings of minerals and how important they are, and the complete question of mathematics is linked in these minerals, so it's a part of our cultural knowledge. And we came with our elements, what we found there, and then we had five users in this castle. So we had the town, they use it for cultural events. We had the university, we had the Saxonian ministry for the depot of the things. So there are a lot of clients, and when you have so much clients, you need something like Esperanto again. And then we found something for them like a form code outcoming of a mineral. We said, okay, we make one form code with an angel, and we produce the building with it. We produce tables in your library with it. We produce handrails with it. We make vitrines with it. We will do it also in building facades. What we add to it, we have corners to open it, and then we have something like Esperanto to make a project on one building with 5 clients, but usually you have, and if you have 5 clients in one building, you will have 5 different designs. And that was a little bit a gap what we tried to fill out with this idea. And on the end, we had this discussion about this ornament and this knowledge, how we can start a very early discussion with the museum outside. So we made this design of the space with this big geometric forms of marble plates and with different surfaces. So if they get wet, they look 3-dimensional a little bit, and the perception it's maybe not comes not out in the photo here. And then we have now a new castle with a complete new identity. It's no more a royal castle, and it's really interesting now with this strategy to add these analogies with the region, with production, with ornament, with knowledge of cultural things. That now it's really interesting to go there and to meet the people of the town, how they explain visitors their own castle and the story. So it's much more like a castle to explain them, like in the Dresden one, to explain the royal history. Today they really explain them the complete knowledge of technology. They have the link to the university. They have people they know more work. They make guided tours to the museum, and it's really get a new building what you can never get in a normal way of designing something. It's really a result of strange things coming together and of the strategy. So you said one. I have, if you want, I can, you have to say when I have to stop. Let's say it like this. So let's jump to another project in another manner, very small design. It's a baptized church of Luther. You had Calvin here in Geneva. We had Luther in Germany. He changed the complete religion world, and he opened a complete time of war with it. And we won a small competition for this church, and it was a little bit strange for us again to work on heritage. Because the client, they had this church. It was what we have everywhere in Germany. The churches get empty, nobody goes there, and they are a mixture of cultural place. And but on another way, they so important in our culture. So because in Germany, every small village is built around a church, and they really like a heart of a town. And now they have really a problem to keep them, to keep this tradition, to open them for new manner. And they said, okay, we want to do something. We want to open our church to baptize every religion, or everybody who wants to come there. We are not more evangelists. We are also Catholics and our religion. But for this, we need a big ball for baptized also people. They want to go underwater, and not only the small one. This is original where Luther was baptized, and we want to have it like in the river. In the Jordan, when Moses did the baptized, so we want to have a pool in the church. And we said, a pool in the church? Incredible. It's a Renaissance church. You cannot add a pool. So we know this. We look for these images. Sometimes you have these places when they do it in indoor, and really in a pool, right, on a Obi market, or really outside in the river. I said, I don't, to find a solution for this. This is a sailing. It's a Gothic church, ribbed with ribbed vault. So to add there a pool, I don't know where. So and then we were thinking about in this competition, and that was the situation when the competition starts. We said everything in this building is protected, only the ground floor. Because they have ugly furniture, they found them somewhere in a lecture hall, and they have no historic ground. So everything what we are doing could be only furniture, and could be something with the ground. So like a common sense, like a carpet or so. And that, okay, this we will do. So this is a result. But for the story, we said, yeah, this is a building. We built a model again, 1-to-1, and we looked for this. Like really this toys like children when he starts to play. He said, okay, this is a church, and we add only the floor in it. And then that is something, that is a common sense, and we made something, we erased also a step. The entrance, we made a ramp, because we have this regulation that everybody has to enter the church today. We want to open it. That is a regulation what we have from the law side, but on the other side, it's good if you want to follow this program to invite everybody in the church. And then we add the staircase between the altar and the nave, that we said, okay, in this case, we need common sense and no staircase everywhere. And this was a big discussion, if you can do it or not in churches. And then we said, and baptizing, we have two elements in this area. One is we know water, and if you drop a stone in it, we have a kind of graphic. And then this region was a region of mining and of farming. And we know when you travel there, you see this farming surface on the earth, and so this material of earth, it was even that is Calvinistic or Lutheran church. They are usually very poor. So the Catholic, it's more filled up with gold and ceremony, and the Protestants, they are more. They live more in silence. So they see, I don't need the relation. I have the relation to my God in another way. So that, okay, but we want to have this kind of Catholic ornament also a little bit in this. And I said, okay, what happens if we drop a stone in the water and then we have these waves around this? And can we add not this little bit on this ground plate? And this, with this solution, we won the competition, so we add only the plate of concrete, and we made the gravure on it, and that was everything. So it was a poor material, very simple one, and we digged a hole in it, and we said, this is a place where you can take your water for baptizing, or you can go in for baptizing, and it's not a pool, because there's a distance between the water and this concrete level, and the water has to be flow. It has to be like to dig a hole in it, and you look like an outcutting in a river, because the baptizing has to be in the Jordan, and the Jordan is a river, and the river it's also a frontier between different cultures. So to go over the Jordan, it's also we use it in Germany in German language. That was something to go in a land where I don't know. Strange people live. So that's why we said this culture we can add in a very simple design, only dig a hole in it, and to write the sentence in letters of Luther, what he said, come to me and I will baptize you. And so that was on the end, very simple design to a church, also done with analogies of this, with graphic elements. There we have the accessibility, without barriers in it. We made a gap between the historical building. We had this furniture, and this is maybe the last analogy to this building, that we said, okay, if we are doing furniture by wood of the region, and in the region they have this apple trees, the pie trees, plum trees. So we do it by different types of wood. In this case, the furniture gets something like a personal intimacy identity in these different kinds of wood. And if the church is not full, you have also different identities anyway in the room. So that was a little bit another irony of please come up, sit on the staircase, but be also a person that you, maybe it's like every bench, it's for an absent person also. It's no more trust in God, no more trust in culture or something like this. So that was the church, and you want one more? Okay. And maybe that is interesting, because now we are going to a thing that where we start on the beginning in the discussion, that I said architecture is influenced by so many things that it allows us not to make an intimacy place. And I think one manner is for us to make an intimacy place if we can minimize the influences on the architecture. So the best thing is the architect builds for his own house, by his own budget, with no building regulations, with no permissions, somewhere in the forest, and then let's talk about intimacy. And that was a little bit ironic test what we did for us, because it was in a place where we traveled a lot in our youth time to Fer du Ski, in the highest place in East Germany. It was 1,200 meters high. So it was the Mont Blanc of East Germany, and a very rough area. And there we bought on the internet a bungalow. It's like a holiday hut in the mountain. It was a prefabricated house. It has a value of nothing today, but it was on this area. It was on the Mont Blanc of East Germany, more or less on the street. And then we had, so it was forgotten. Nobody used it. And it was exposed to the mountain weather, and it had, I think, in the next 5 years, it would be disappeared. But there was also this building law on it. So it was, and for us, this building was something like a dream. It was something like a dream, and we compared this with a bus stop. If you know a bus stop in a small village, you're standing on a bus stop, and then you say, yeah, now the bus is coming, and he brings me to the big town. And this is a well-known bus stop in Germany. This is a bus stop of Bill Kaulitz. It's a band leader of Tokyo Hotel. The young generation know them. So everybody goes there to this bus stop, and he cuts his name in it. It's like the grave of Jim Morrison in Paris. But this was a dream, very simple building. And we said, but for us it's the opposite. We are coming from the town, going to the mountain, and we want to go in the nature. So it's like opposite. And maybe we can do a project out of this. So this building had no value, but in another way, it was a building law on it. So you could restore it because it was outside of a village. Usually, if you destroy something outside of a village, you cannot build again new. So you can restore it or you can conserve it. And he said, okay, we conserve it, but how? Not to replace the wooden panels. We said we want to conserve it. If we put a shelter or something what could protect the wood around. And we said, okay, we use it like a form, and we put concrete around this. And this concrete keeps the wood. So we sent the permission, we asked for the permission in the building administration. They had a really big struggle because one was responsible and one was sitting in one valley and the other one was sitting in the other valley. And it's like in Switzerland, maybe sometimes if you have a valley in between, there are no discussions. So, and then you have the law that if you don't get an answer after 6 months, you have the permission. Fantastic. So we get the permission on the end. It was not done against everything. So it was we controlled everything that is in the law. But the irony was that we get the permission of the non-discussion of the different administrations. And then we start to rebuild it. We found an enterprise in the mountain. They build a chaffaudage also, but they built a formwork for the concrete, and then we replaced the windows with steel panels, and then we pumped the concrete in, and we said, yeah, now what we can do is we will use this building like the absence, like traces in this. And like after the tsunami, you have these ground plots or the work of Right. And when the administration comes to us and they will ask for where's this former hut, we say, yeah, it's still there. You see it. It's a copy of them, but it's also a presence of them. It's like a trace in the snow, and we are just working on what we are going to do. This is in the law written. So what is to keep it? In this manner, we keep it. And then also we said we will use this hut only 10 days a year. In this case, we were not responsible to put isolation on it, because minergie, that is another discussion, how to come out of the question of minergie. We said, yeah, it's a temporary use, it's like a garage, and you don't have to heat a garage. And it's a question of use, and now we are responsible for this. And then we are remembered on this igloo building, so we said, in old farmhouses, what we know of this architectural references. Now we could work with architectural references, like these old farmhouses. You had fire in the middle, humans and animals. The animals heat the humans also when the fire was out. So it was like to share elements. And then we said, yeah, this we can do. So fire, it's the most rural element, and this we have to implementate in the architecture. And so in this case, we implemented only one thing in this in the center of the hut. It was an oven, or 2 ovens. And if you are going there alone or by friends, you have to take care about wood, like you have it here in Switzerland in every mountain hut. So it's a very cooperative thing. Then you have to, and then you can heat the middle. And if you want to have it warm, you can sit around the fire. And if you want to sleep, you go in these 2 beds on a corner, and there you can sleep. And this is a more intimacy place on the corners, and in the middle you will have the fire. And if it gets cold, you have to go closer to the fire. And that is really a test. It was a test, or it's still a test for us. And every time when we go there, with friends, with architects, or other people go there, they really start a discussion about the necessity, what we need today. We need today fire, we need today insulation, what we have to heat, how closer we can come together. And really, it's a question of rural elements. And on the end, the most important thing is like a Swiss fondue. You sit around, you discuss about things, and it is not intimacy, but it's. I think this is what we have to do, or what it's a thing what we want to do in architecture, not to make intimacy. I think we have to do it to bring people together. And also, when you have to sleep, you need a neighbor. You have to heat you, because the heating is really like when you enter there, you have minus 10 degree outside, you have also minus 10 degree inside. It's the same what you have here. So for Germany was new, but in Switzerland we learned about a lot of mountain tours that this exists on each hedge here. And then another analogy was for us irony of the that we educated or we grew up in cars. So our parents traveled with us in these cars, the minimalistic room what we had. So a family sitting in a car, and we were grown up on this furniture. We can remember on each detail of this first car what the family had. And then we started to produce furniture also for this mountain hut. So we found this old interior chairs of this car, of Fiat 120. So we made the chairs of it. And then we had a lot of projects what we did, a lot of design elements what they threw away when they changed the functions. So that this is to wash your hands from an industry factory, what they use. So we gave them a new home to come back there. You had the lamps, we had all these chairs. We made the details in the same manner, like not to follow regulation of Minergie. So there is air floating beside the windows. You can open it completely with air pressure pump system. Staircases is a small, they have no handrails. It's just a small corner or it's a small steel in the wall. You have industrial lamps and you have a very minimalist building on the end. And this is a problem, I think, what we have today when we start to discuss with clients and when we start to discuss with architectural journals. Every time when we see a project in an architectural journal, the first thing is what we are doing, we're looking at who was the architect, who was the client. And then we can value all details in the project. If the details are done against the law, beside the law, with special permissions of a client, and because especially all details, what we like, they beside the system what we have. And this is really a question, and it's something like we're looking for an answer in each project, how far we can be our feet from the law system, not to be in a prison, to make a concrete building without isolation, to make a concrete building without the ceiling, because they have no protection on top also. And if it gets really hard, sometimes water drops in. And this is really a discussion about how to produce architecture. And last time we had a client, he was in medicine. We built him a nice living house, and 2 times a year, water comes in of one window corner. And we tried everything with the employers to find this hole. And then this client said to us, you know, I'm a doctor, and I have every day 100 people coming to me asking why I'm sick. And he says, you know, I have not for everybody an answer. And if this water don't kill my house and don't kill me, let it come in. So, but these clients, you will have only 1 of 100 to follow you in this manner. And that's maybe the question that I think we need very beginning, and that's why we start with this image also. We have a common sense, we have to find a common sense between the law, between engineers, between financiers, between architects, between ideas, like really this artwork of Alan Wexler, to drink together with this pipe system and to hold up the cup in the same time and to follow every on the same level and to trust the other one also to follow you. And I think this is very important. And now I have to hide you again, the last project, and to invite you to Lausanne, because there we made a strange experiment that we think, we made a project complete strange, because we tried to build the best room. We made an analysis of 36 different very private rooms of architectural well-known buildings with the students at the EPFL and with our atelier, and we said, please take them and make an imprint of this room, like this white red models. And then we gave them 36 paintings of interiors, very private paintings. You know, maybe this one of Caspar David Friedrich, a woman standing at the window. And we said, okay, rebuild this very private painting in a room. to find out what is a manner of privacy and to put them also in a system of a flat, so design a flat around it. And then the last step, please, we will do a competition with the 36 students on a plot at the EPFL to find your own idea what is the most best room or most private intimacy room what you can have, to invite people to be alone there. And we had the competition, and Aldo Nolli, who was a last lecturer in your series, he was in the jury with Katharine Hohmann from Geneva here. She's an artist. And then we get the first prize. And then we made a strange thing. We said, okay, we have a first prize, and this could be the best room. And this best room we want to build, it's outcoming of 108 designs. So the result of the research of 108 designs. And we took 36 young architects and 5 clients like us from the atelier, and we said, this room we want to build. In 1 week. So we had 4 weeks to design this, to make a communication, to discussion. We had meetings with Suva. We had a budget of 4,000 Swiss francs. So it was, we have to control money with it. We have to discuss it. On the end, we get a room. And this was interesting if you ask for intimacy. On the end, the result, it's a pavilion. It's still standing there for 1 month. So if you want, please go there and give us a feedback. It's the most privacy place or intimacy place what we could build this year, I think. So if I have to vote for the most intimacy place, then will be, I think, the voting for me is this room, outcoming of 108 design researchers with 36 architects and 5 clients. They're also architects. The best thing was we have no static, we had no influences from, so we erased some, we minimized some things, and it's temporary, we have no Minergie, so sometimes this helps on the design. It could be interesting now to make their Minergie building out of it and to keep the idea, but it's also difficult to show this minimalism and these images here, but what we did, we gave them also a personal identity on YouTube, a personal identity on Facebook. We put them back in the media, out of the intimacy, and we said, yeah, and now the next step is we want to offer this pavilion to a private owner. Maybe if somebody wants to have it, he can take it, because we have to destroy it in the next 2 months because there is less space at the EPFL because it's a really growing university, as you see also there. So that's why we built in silence something faster than Kengo Guma building under one roof, and it has a type of intimacy. And so the last sentence, maybe I invite you from Geneva to Lausanne to come there and maybe to talk there about intimacy and about building regulations and influence of architecture. Okay, merci beaucoup. Hein.